Thank you for joining us on another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line. I'm Tony Carvajal, the Executive Vice President of the Florida Chamber Foundation, and joining me today is a Foundation Trustee and President of Tallahassee Community College, Dr. Jim Murdaugh. Jim, thanks for being here today.
Tony, thanks for having me.
We're going to discuss talent and education, and you have a unique perspective. Not only are you currently the President of Tallahassee Community College, but over time you've worked in a number of different organizations, including the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, where you headed up their training bureau. You've seen the process of education. And you know, businesses and parents around the states understand the importance of education. But from your side, from the development side, tell us a little bit about the talent development pipeline and its importance to Florida's economy and its future.
Well, you know, Tony, one of the things that I think is fascinating for me, having been in this role for quite some time, is the way in which we talk about it today has a new flavor to it. Now we talk about talent supply, and we recognize the importance of the men and women who work in our organizations as it relates to our bottom line, as it relates to our productivity. And in my estimation, the talent is what, of course, businesses need to focus on, because it's generally 80 to 90% of their entire cost of operation. It's also the most unlimited resource that any organization is going to have in terms of the intellectual capacity that people bring in. And that relates directly to the bottom line. So it's a very fun time. It's an interesting time where in our dialogue, it's not so much anymore about jobs, but about skills. And it's about making sure people have the right skills to get the jobs. And once they have the jobs, they contribute to the productivity of companies.
You know, an answer like that will show our listeners exactly why you're currently also selected as the chair of the Leon County Economic Development Council. You've been working on systems and community development as well as talent development. Give me your perspective about the region that we're in here in Tallahassee and Leon County.
Well, we are lucky because we happen to have two public universities and a relatively significant community college, which I'm familiar with. In our community, Tony, we have about 70,000 students just in the three higher education spheres. Not to mention, of course, state government, where we see people circulating out of state government looking for jobs. So we have an incredible pool of available talent. And our challenge with the Economic Development Council is to try to find existing businesses who want to grow, find new businesses who want to relocate here, and find people who want to create businesses using that talent. And then we have an amazing pool of talent.
Now, as you're planning for the future, I appreciate you reaching out to us and talking about the 6 pillars and Tallahassee and Leon County becoming a 6-pillar community. Why is that so important to you? Well,
as you know, we went through our strategic plan as a college this past year. And I have a different view than some about strategic planning. I've done strategic planning where you finish and you have a beautiful book that you put on the shelf and you're done with it. As you know, in working together, as you and I have done in the past, I think it needs to be a tool that we use to manage our organizations and lead our organizations. What 6 Pillars really does, what it allows us to do, is build upon the excellent work that went into the creation of 6 Pillars, all of the really good thinking that makes sure that every single element of the pillars is addressed in our thinking and our planning as we move forward as organizations. And you can't leave anything out if you use the 6 Pillars, which is what I love. And when we frame it around that, the other benefit to us is it allows us then to benchmark around the state to see where we might learn from other communities and improve what we do, to see areas where we may be doing well but want to do better. So it gives us that framework and the ability to compare ourselves with others.
Now, we've been very lucky that not only has Enterprise Florida, CareerSource Florida, the Department of Economic Opportunity, and many communities around the states, they've adopted the 6 pillars. Just in case one of our listeners is not in one of the regions that or those communities that have adopted the 6 pillars, what's your final word? What's your advice to them?
Well, my advice to them is call the Florida Chamber Foundation. And I say that in all sincerity because you know, we reached out to you and your team, and you have been gracious enough to help us understand what's gone on around the state, lessons learned from other communities that have gone before us that we can then apply as we move forward. But again, I think the reason I would suggest it, in addition to building upon the lessons learned, is that at the end of the day, we need statewide data that we can use to improve the economy of the state of Florida and understand our relationship to other communities as we move forward and we do that work.
Well, I'm looking forward to working with you here in our community and with listeners all around the state. If you do want to reach the Florida Chamber Foundation, call 850-521-1200. I'm Tony Carvajal, and this has been another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line.